You wake up burning with fever. Or maybe it's your leg snapped, the bone pushing hard against the skin. And it's 40,000 years ago. There's no doctor, no pharmacy, no hospital, no antibiotics, no one who can even tell you what an infection is. For almost every animal alive, this is the end. A sick or injured creature in the wild is very quickly a dead one. The herd moves on by nightfall. And yet, your ancestors got sick, got hurt, got infected, got bitten, and a shocking number of them lived. Not by luck. They survived because they had 3 weapons no other animal on Earth had ever held. A whole forest full of medicine, the first surgeons, and each other. What they figured out, with no microscopes and no idea that germs even existed, is genuinely stunning. So what did ancient humans actually do when they got sick? Let's find out. Here's the first surprise. Medicine is older than humans. Watch a sick chimpanzee. The primatologist Michael Huffman spent years documenting it. When chimps at Mahala in Tanzania are crawling with gut parasites, they do something strange. They swallow rough, bristly leaves whole, without chewing. So the leaves scrape the worms out of their intestines on the way through. It's the world's least pleasant deworming pill. No chewing, all texture. When they're really sick, they chew the bitter pith of a plant called Vernonia, the same plant local human healers use for the very same illnesses. The animals know. And our ancestors inherited that instinct, then supercharged it. Over thousands of years, ancient humans built a living encyclopedia of the land, which root breaks a fever, which bark dulls pain, which leaf closes a wound, and passed it down, elder to child, around the fire for hundreds of generations. And we have proof it worked. In a Spanish cave called El Sidrón, scientists scraped the hardened plaque off the teeth of a Neanderthal who lived around 49,000 years ago. That plaque told a story. He was in pain, a nasty dental abscess in the jaw, and had a stomach bug. And trapped in his plaque was what he'd been eating, poplar. Poplar contains salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin. A Neanderthal was chewing nature's painkiller for a toothache, tens of thousands of years before a pharmacy existed. So the next time you pop an aspirin, just know a Neanderthal beat you to the active ingredient. No childproof cap required. There were even traces of a penicillium mold, the source of penicillin. Though scientists are careful to say we can't prove he used that one on purpose. Possibly the most scientist sentence ever written, we found penicillin in his mouth. But let's not get carried away. And it wasn't just one plant or one place. Around the world, ancient peoples chewed willow bark, another source of that same aspirin chemical, for pain and fever. They packed open wounds with honey, which we now know genuinely kills bacteria. They used resins and tree saps that seal a cut like a natural bandage, and certain clays that soak up toxins and calm a sick stomach. This wasn't guesswork. It was a pharmacy, and the whole thing was memorized. Plants are one thing, but ancient humans also cut. Now, look at enough prehistoric skeletons, and you start seeing it everywhere. Broken bones that healed cleanly, seen straight and strong. That doesn't just happen. A bad fracture has to be pulled back into place and held there for weeks while someone else feeds and protects you. Every healed break is a tiny story of skill and care. And they didn't just set bones, they closed wounds. Ancient healers stitched gashes shut with plant fibers and animal sinew. Some cultures even pinched a wound closed using the jaws of biting ants as living sutures. They drained infections, and they stopped deadly bleeding by searing the wound with fire. Cautery. Then it gets bolder. There's a surgery called trepanation, scraping or drilling a hole straight through the skull into the living bone. And to be clear, we're talking about drilling through a living skull with a sharpened stone. No anesthesia. Take a breath. It sounds like a death sentence. But here's the astonishing part. In skull after ancient skull, the bone around the hole has grown smooth and healed. Which means the patient lived. Many live for years. Some skulls even carry several healed holes from different operations on the same person. They were performing skull surgery with stone tools and people walked away.
All good.
And the boldest of all, in 2022, archaeologists in Borneo found the skeleton of a young person whose lower left leg had been surgically amputated, cleanly, deliberately, about 31,000 years ago. Whoever did it understood anatomy, how to cut without causing fatal blood loss, how to keep the wound from going septic. And we know it worked because that young person lived another 6 to 9 years before dying as a young adult. Real surgery. 31,000 years ago, roughly 30,000 years before anyone got around to inventing the waiting room. We did not stumble into medicine recently. We have been cutting, setting, and healing for a very, very long time. But the single most powerful medicine ancient humans had wasn't a plant or a blade. It was the group. Think about what being sick actually means in the wild. You can't hunt, you can't gather, you can't keep up or defend yourself. For almost any other species, that is simply the end. What made humans different is that we did not leave our sick behind. We carried them. Remember the Neanderthal from Shanidar Cave? He was blind in one eye, one arm withered and useless, and partly deaf. And he lived into old age, which is only possible if other people fed and protected him for years. Go back even further. A 1.7 million year old skull from Manisi belonged to an early human who had lost almost all their teeth, yet survived long after, meaning someone softened or chewed their food for them, day after day. And notice how radical that really is. Every mouthful you give to someone who can't hunt is a mouthful taken from someone who can. To care for the sick is to bet the group's own survival on a single suffering person, a bet almost nothing else in nature is willing to make. No lion nurses a limping rival back to health. No herd waits a month for a broken leg to mend. We did, over and over, and it is one of the quiet reasons we are still here. We made it constantly. Compassion might be the oldest medicine we own. And there was one more layer, the mind. The first doctor was very often the healer, the shaman, and their tools were ritual, chant, smoke, and belief.
The mind.
Now, some of you are already rolling your eyes. Chanting and smoke, come on. And yes, we're quick to dismiss that as superstition. But belief is not nothing. The placebo effect is real and measurable. Hope, comfort, and the certainty that someone is fighting for you genuinely change how the body fights back. When there was no cure to give, being cared for and believing you would heal was itself a kind of treatment. Sometimes it was the only one, and sometimes it was enough. Now let's be honest, we shouldn't romanticize it. Ancient humans had no idea germs existed. Infections, fevers, childbirth, and parasites killed enormous numbers of them, often terribly young, and there was a great deal they simply could not save. But look at what they built out of nothing. With no microscope and no science, they invented the 3 pillars that all of modern medicine still stands on. Pharmacology, finding the plant that heals, surgery, the nerve and the skill to cut and mend, and care, a community that refused to let a sick person face it alone. Every pill in your cabinet, every surgeon's steady hand, every nurse who sits through the night with someone in pain is the direct descendant of an ancient human who looked at someone suffering by the fire and decided, against every cold instinct of the wild, to help them live. That single choice is where medicine began. And it might be one of the most human things we have ever done. This is Sketchient. Subscribe and stay curious about where we came from.